Lately, I've been really focused on creating mini artworks in preparation for a postcard art show that I'm participating in later this winter. So that kind of has given me a restriction, a limitation to play with as far as scale. And I always love to work abstract, so that's kind of another fun thing. Just decided to put on some music that made me happy and start creating. And that music happened to be the soundtrack to the movie Wicked, Part 1. So I love Wicked. I love the story of Wicked. I love the book, the musical, and surprise, surprise, I love the movie. So when I sat down to create, I chose my black mixed media paper that I had pre-cut to the 4x6 scale that I'm creating pieces within for this upcoming postcard show. And I recently got these really cool metallic paint markers. I wanted to experiment with those and see how they looked on the black paper. So I created the piece, the finished piece that you see here, listening to the Wicked soundtrack and just kind of doing whatever made me happy and pulling colors that felt inspiring, and ended up creating an abstract mini artwork inspired by Elphaba. That was really fabulous and great, and it's a piece that I fell in love with. Problem is, I was trying to make art for this art show, and the artworks are going to go up for sale. If they're in the show, they're for sale. And I just couldn't bear to part with this piece because I just love it so much, and it's going to be the start of a series. It's a whole thing. So I decided to try to recreate it. Now, if you've ever tried to recreate one of your pieces before, you probably know that it never quite turns out the same. And because you're not in that freshness of the first time you're making it, it's just a different sort of experience. So that's what I discovered in creating this piece, because I was really just creating a copy of something else I'd made that was a moment of creative time that I couldn't replicate. So I couldn't replicate that, but I could at least try to replicate the piece so that I had a piece that for the show that I was excited about, but then I also had the piece that I could keep too, because it's often very hard to give away your art. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm looking at my original piece and I'm trying to remember the steps that I took to create it and then replicate that in a second piece that's going to go in this art show. So this is a series, the one I'm creating a copy of is the very first one I created, where it's an abstract piece that ended up being inspired by a character from a movie. And then after I created this piece, I created another piece more intentionally inspired by Glinda. So I have this green one for Elphaba. I have a pink one that I'll share in another video which is funny, I didn't film the first time through. So that's another reason why I'm recreating it, because I really wanted to share the process of creating this piece and then also the idea of recreating a piece too, and kind of talk about that a bit. So I also didn't film the original Glinda one. So I'll have to recreate that one too, because it's another piece I made for this show that I don't want to part with. I really love it. And I'm intending to visit many of the characters from the movie and create abstract pieces inspired by them and the colors that come to mind when I think of them. So I lay down the dark green to kind of create it. The thing that I found with it's true with any sort of paint marker, is that it's not really meant to like build up. You kind of have to do, a solid coat from the get-go. So there's a lot of texture there in my initial green shape. And I'm going to explore a couple different ways to even that out and kind of fill it in so the streakiness doesn't show. With the lights and on camera, the streakiness shows more here than it did in the original artwork itself, when you see it in just the light when you're not, it's not getting blasted by ring lights. I started with a basic shape, and then I gave it a border, and then I put gold details. So some gold line work, some gold confetti in the background. I love filling space with marks. And this is kind of a trickle over from a couple other things I've been exploring lately in my artistic process. So it's just carrying over here, which is really nice. It's just another thing that I can kind of pull into pieces that is a really fun effect and an interesting way to fill the background, but it's also very easy and minimally time consuming. It's really great. So I'm doing some little confetti in the gold. The gold covers great. And actually, these markers are pretty fabulous. They're the super golden marker. I'll link them in the description below. I got them on Amazon because I have metallic watercolors, and I wanted to see if I could find a metallic marker that was a paint marker to really kind of supplement my Posca pens and some of the other markers that I've acquired over time. Again, I don't quite remember everything that I did, so I'm playing art detective, right? I'm looking at the original piece and seeing how did I do that? And I'm experimenting and trying different processes and different steps and different materials and colors and values to try to recreate the original piece. because how I treated the centerpiece isn't completely obvious. And I was truly in a moment of creative awesomeness when I made the original one. So I have to do a little bit of play and experimentation to see if I can recreate that. So just like I filled the background with some different marks, I'm doing the same thing with the inside. Now it's kind of funny because this does sort of start to look like tentacles, when you add these circles to it, the little suction cup vibe. I don't think of circles when I think of Elphaba necessarily, but I just like circles. So it's a mix of character inspiration, color, story, and then the things that bring me joy in art these days. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.